So, and I'm a retired elder generation. Yeah, and so this session, we will continue the discussions on politics of ecology and energy and the community. And for these sessions, and we have only one speaker. Yeah, this is Hernan VARGAS, yes, from Venezuela. Yeah, and okay, so I learned a bit Espanol before, but I forgot everything already. So Hernan is a member of the ALBA. I don't know what's that, the Movement's Secretariat. So Social Movements American Continental Platform is the name, the abbreviation for that. Yeah, and responsible for the political articulation and the international solidarity. Yeah, okay. And a member of the political coordination of the Urban People's Movement. Yeah, it's called Movimiento de Pobladores. Yes. Yo. And he's also experienced in political education for the territorial planning and community building. And so we will have Hernan to present for half an hour. And then you will have our discussion. We ran far from Beijing to meet us here at the screen because of some reasons. He cannot come to Hong Kong to attend the conference in person. But he's now actually watching the forum. Yeah, okay. So, and then afterwards we have maybe a lot of time for open discussions. Yeah, okay, so please.
Thank you all for the opportunity of being here in Hong Kong, talking to you about Venezuela's process. Thank to Lingnan University, to the Global University, specifically to my friend King Chi and all the friends here, all the staff, and you all. Second of all, I won't talk about all the specific issues of what's going on in Venezuela. I strongly recommend the papers, some of the readers that are actually in the website available. I think that there is a really good one, dossier, which has been made by the Tricontinental Institute, which analyze the situation of Venezuela, and another one's hybrid wars. It's the way they put it. And they also analyze about Ecuador and Nicaragua and Cuba. I think it's really interesting. Also, you have the reader has been made actually by the group of Lingnan University with Kimchi, which is really interesting, that puts the analysis of the battle for sovereignty in Venezuela, and have, I think, that pretty good points to understand, to analyze the situation. And also, I would like to invite you, after dinner, we will have a discussion here between 9 and 10 about a global campaign that we are promoting from social movements in Venezuela, which is called Trump Unblock Venezuela. That's our slogan. And then we can talk to you better about the specific situation of blockade that we are claiming right now in Venezuela. But now I will talk to you in the frame of the sixth South-South Forum of Sustainability about what we call the communal way in Venezuela. Venezuela, just to give some facts, it's a country which is ubicated at the North or South America, linking with the Caribbean Sea. By the west, we have Colombia. Then by the east, we have Guyana. And by the south, our comrades from Brazil. And we have something like 40 million population. And we live mainly by oil. And we have a situation during the last 20 years of permanent confrontation with international interest. Venezuela has always been providing commodities basically to the US and the central countries. And since 1999, we began a process of transformation, national transformation, which was based in the rejection of the neoliberalism, in the rejection of the traditional parties and the ways of make politics, and also against the inequality of society. And from then, I want to talk to you specifically about how the organization and mobilization has played a central role in Venezuela. First of all, I want to talk to you a little about what we call reinventing democracy in the Bolivarian Revolution. Then, that first one is more like a timeline. Then, a little points for analysis, what I call some potentials that we have accumulated during these years. And for closure, maybe talk to you about what we think that are some of contradictions and tensions in revolutionary process. Well, first of all, actually, there's a really interesting view about Venezuela, which has given a Colombian writer that once said that instead Hugo Chavez has been known as the father of socialism of 21st century. He says that he is also the father of 21st century democracy. And we actually like that concept because we think that one of the first strategies of the Bolivarian Revolution has been densifying the democracy. And there are some bases that was used for that. I think that it's important to know that in 1999, we have had a constituent process with a new constitution to refound society. And it was based in a change of the model of democracy to participation and protagonism. And I think that there are four specific ways of implement that model. The first one is the massification of political information. In Venezuela, in Latin America, it's like, think that a little popular, the ways of communicate that Hugo Chavez had since 20 years ago. Everything was in television. That time wasn't so big the social networks issue, but socialization of information in the media about the national budget, the great policies, the political programs of the state, of the bigger issues. I think that is really important. Some episode in the Venezuelan and the global history that was the invasion of the United States in Afghanistan, in our country. That was an important moment where Hugo Chavez proposed to the nation that we have to condemn that situation. And there starts a process of massification of political information. Then we have another basis, which is the democratization and dynamization of electoral process. In Venezuela, till 1999, no, actually till 2004, we have a manual system electoral, which was really easy to have trapped and to be manipulated. But we start since that date with a electronical and direct system, informatic system, which has been validated by many international authorities and some foundations dedicated to see electoral process. And also, it starts a process of massive identification for the majority of the population, because till that moment, there wasn't so easy the identity process to have your DNA, your identification card. And also it starts a process of building more electoral centers, because most of them was in the capitals, in the centers area of the cities, not in the rural land, not in the more poor areas, barrios in urban and rural. And that was kind of an important process of participation. Since then, we have had in the last 20 years, 25 electoral process of different kind, seeing presidential, parliament, regional, and local. And also a couple of consultations. Then an important basis was the territory planning that became, and that kind of sounds a little amazing sometimes, a process of mobilization. In Venezuela, it starts the process, maybe like Porto Alegre, about a participatory budget, but also it starts a little more basic process of planification in communal councils and communes and different sector policies of planification, and also even linking with the electoral process. Since the 2006, it starts the culture of every time that was a presidential election, the president, Hugo Chavez, proposed a program of government to the people. And that program of government actually have been discussed in many parts of the country, in different communities. Actually, for 100,000 persons in the last 20 years, and that for us is an important issue. And then we have a popular organization and mobilization process, which I will talk you more in this presentation. It's where we wanna put the center of this conversation. Well, as I told you, I wanna make a little timeline of how has evolved the organization process in Venezuela. Sorry, because it's not in Mandarin characters, but I will try to explain it. First, and I have to clarify that this isn't a linear road. The history isn't linear, so I just try to put it in line, but obviously the history is not for periods. It's not Cartesian. Obviously, in our case, the organization and participation has been a center core in the whole different moments of these last 20 years. Without organization and mobilization, it will be impossible to resist. And of course, we always want to clarify that any process that implies or tries to transform the society has contradictions. That's an important thing to say. Well, say that in this timeline, I make a difference between those central policies, which are policies imposed from the state, from the party, and autonomous policies, which are those ones that comes from the grassroots. In the first, I want to talk about central policies. I will try to be a little quick here. Maybe one of the important, one of the first ones of those policies has been the Bolivarian Circles. When in 2000 starts the necessity to build policy, constructing a form of organization that people can participate since the grassroots, since the neighborhoods, in the actual policy. Because to guarantee inclusion, you need that people participate. But that was the first try and has no really organical proposal, but also was an important one. Maybe something like 15,000 Bolivarian circles has been confirmed in the whole country. But after that, it starts a process a little more organic. Our constitution give the state of right for many different human rights, and put them aside the market. They said the education gotta be free because it's a human right. The health gotta be free because it's a human right, and like that, any other services. And for achieve that, one of the strategies that was developed in Bolivarian Revolution was establish forms of organization for each of them. For example, we here talk about the technical committees and roundtables. In Venezuela, we start a process where if the water is right, you have to organize people in the neighborhoods to can help in the guarantee of that right. People organize, for example, in different roundtables for energy, for water, for urban land. For example, in urban land, they start to make I think we call it catastro, which is like kind of cadastre, settlement to put in a map the neighborhoods. Caracas, maybe the 50%, 60% of the population lives in popular neighbors that before the revolution wasn't in a map. And already they are in a map because the people start to organize these committees of urban land to make the cadastre and to have this history of the neighborhood to put it in a map and start the fight for the land settlement, the land regulation. No? So every family can have security over the floor where it has always lived, in the land that it has always lived. And that happens like that in the chase of water. The round tables was a community organization where people from the neighbor start together and start to make a diagnose of the situation of the water. Where are the principal top lines? Where are the different ones? And how can you establish a project to connect the community to the central system of water? And like that, there was a process important in different areas. Then we have what we call from the institution to the mission. The mission or the social programs are, las misiones sociales are really famous in the continent because when we try to implement the new constitution that says that everyone has right to the education, we find that the Ministry of Education is a really heavy statement, a really heavy structure that is not made to accomplish that goal. So there starts a point where Chavez defines a social mission, a social program, like when you put together the state, the social organization, and in this case, the rent, the income from the oil, to make possible that everyone has education. And there, with the international cooperation of the comrades from Cuba, which puts the method, it was possible that every night in all the neighborhoods, you take the school that is open at the daylight for the little ones, in the night is open for all the elders that haven't studied to illiterate, to have primary studies, to have secondary studies, to have even university studies. Then we have the process from the committees to community councils. That's an interesting part of our history, because we start to discuss that we have a committee in the community which handles the thing of water, another one that sees the thing of urban land, another one that have the things that are related to food, and different ones. But we have to start to have some coordination system for all of them. And there Chavez proposes the figure of the community councils, which are like a first stage for self-government from the grassroots, where the committee, which handles the water with education and with urban land, and all the committees can coordinate to have a policy of government in the grassroots. Then we have what I call like some kind of reverse process, which is from the mission to the institution. It starts the necessity of giving some kind of validation to the social programs that had to start, like some kind of bypass, some kind of a way to achieve the goal, but you have to give it some institution basis. And there starts like a process that where the institution, that heavy education ministry, starts to absorb the process of the mission. Then we have a process from communal councils to communes, which is a moment in the revolution when you start to see that in some common area, when you have some common problems, you have to get together different communities, and different community councils have to put together to maybe solve bigger problems, like water lines, like big tubes of water, or for even for the plantations, for the agricultural production, you need some kind of means that other level that requires what we call an adding of the communal councils, an aggregation system of them, so they can have actually self-government in that process. There was actually an important process of reflection about that, because we start to think about different experiences, like the Soviets and the USSR in the first part, but actually with a critical view about that process, because it became a bureaucratization process. But even the process of the popular communes here in China, and we start like to study and research different references. And then even it became in a process of more accumulation from communes to cities and communal access, and even bills for people's power to have a legal basis for a new architecture. I haven't said it, but of course, this timeline is about organization, but it can be the link from the context, general context of the country, economical, political. And right at this time, in 2005 and 2006, there was a proposition to the country of a new reform in the Constitution. The purpose of that reform was establish a new architecture for the society, where communes and communal access and communal cities was the new way of arrangement of society. And that was a reform, one of the two electoral process that revolution has lost. We lost at that time. The reform wasn't approved by most of the people. And there started a process of evaluation about what does it mean. But after 2 years, starts a process of more discussion to put in the way of actually achieve communal cities and communal access. And actually, a lot of people starts primarily in the rural land to find his own communal corridors, his own communal access, his own communal cities. And after that, Hugo Chavez proposed like some kind of, there are bills, actual acts for people's power, which are about commune, which are about social control, which are about popular economy, which are about this communal system of planning. And those different bills were tools for that new architecture. And after that, we have a process when we goes from that actual laws to a new space of government. If you see the years that I have in there, from in 2013, it dies Hugo Chavez, and starts the new government with Nicolás Maduro. And Nicolás Maduro proposed that we need to have a popular system of government. That whole thing that we have accumulated has to have a way to relationate with the state. And he proposed the formula of the councils for people's government, that were a national instance where all the communes of the country could deliberate with the chief of executive power. Actually, that one in there, it's a picture of one of those meetings. Those in there are commoners from all the country talking to the president, talking about different plans in economy, in agricultural production, in infrastructure, in water, in different of those process. After that, it starts like a new phase. That actual part of the Council of People Government generates different kind of people councils government. One for the communes, one for the cultural workers, one for the human, for gender equality, one for the sexual diversity, and there has like 12 different councils for people government. Was a really interesting try. And after that, it starts like a different phase where those processes couldn't have like a really organic goal. And it started a process like kind of less densified, less dense, but for instrumentation of the whole diversity of organization, which was called the Bolivarian People's Congress. That was kind of a different formula, not for dialogue, for build policies and programs. It was more for established strategies of mobilization. As you see in the year, it's more in the years of the blockade, of the aggression from the United States. And so this instance is more for planning of mobilization, of resistance. And then we have a different, maybe one of the more recent etapes to finish this timeline, which are from the communes to the local supply and production committees. They are called CLAPs. Are like a grassroots organization to guarantee the distribution of food which the state imports and then distributes directly to the communities. And it depends on the capacity of state to have resources to import that food, but also in the community organization that can receive that and distribute it to the poorest families in the country. That policy, it's a policy which is On difference of the communal councils were spaces of participation and organization where the community assembly defines the delegates. In this case, the communities to the local supply are part of the communal councils, but also from another political entities. And actually, that kind of organization till now guarantees the distribution of food subsidized from the state to 6 million families. Well, that's talking about what I call the central policies. I'll call now about the autonomy policies, which are in different kinds. I want to talk at least about 5 of them. They are some kind of meeting of different fights in Venezuela, of different struggles that we used to call for all our struggles. That was put assembled between the urban fight and the rural fight. And I want to emphasize in 3 of them. One of them is the community and alternative media. After 2004 in Venezuela, when there was a coup d'etat promoted by the USA, one of the more significant situation was the participation of the mass media. It was absolutely aligned with the coup d'etat and has absolutely legalized the situation immediately. Even before they broadcast the whole transmission of the self-proclamation of a new president when they overthrow Hugo Chavez. And as you may know, like 2 days later, by people's mobilization, Hugo Chavez was reestablished in the presidency of the republic. And at that time, one of the lessons was that we need some kind of different media, and it starts a whole process to promote community radios or even community TVs that can broadcast information to the population by a different way. And that's kind of an interesting process. There was a time when all those media, alternative and from grassroots, start to demand the necessity of control at least the half or the whole, how do you call this, radioelectrical spectrum, maybe? Yeah, could be. The broadcast area for FM and AM. Then we have the peasant struggle against the landlords. In Venezuela, as in other countries, we have an important landlord class. But just after the coup d'etat in 2002, we start to promote some kind of bills to regain all the land that is subutilized or that is abandoned, is in use. So it's about regaining it for the community, for the little peasants or small producers can have the land. And that was also an important process that generates a lot of mobilization. And then I want to emphasize in the cities against real estate speculation. In that case is one of the platforms that I am part of. I'm part of the urban movement, urban settlement movement, which is a platform of organizations from the cities that we occupy land subutilized or abandoned in cities. There was a friend in the lunch told me, but is that legal? And actually, as I was telling you before, during these years, we have made it legal. And basically proposing that in the cities, there are a lot of land that isn't used, and people has no houses, has no community centers, has not sport facilities or health facilities. So we actually achieve bills to regain, to rescue those lands for the people. And in our case, we fight to build our own communities in those lands by a self-management mode of production, not the market mode of production, not hiring a private enterprise, if not by ourselves, the workers organized to produce in the land. Also, we have built some buildings, but now we are also starting to farm in the city, which is a little difficult for us, for the whole culture of oil, but we are starting to learn. Then we have some kind of attempts of platforms of unitary articulation between all those struggles. There are many different kind of them. I put in one of these photos what we call Chavismo Bravío, which is a part of different assembled social movements. This was in 2017. Right opposition in Caracas was trying to overthrow the government by generating violence in the streets. And at that time, since by the side of the Chavismo, we start to mobilize in the streets. And this is one of those demonstrations to call for peace, which is something that I forgot to mention. But actually, one of the particularities in Venezuela that it's important to say is that we are the left in Venezuela is till now reunited in the Chavismo. We are all the different tendencies of left, revolutionary or progressive till now has been united inside the Chavismo, which is that kind of poor people that, as I told you before, in 1999 decide to change society. Of course, that isn't ideal. We have different tendencies, we have different positions, we have different bets, but till now, that's a base of national unity that allows to fight against the imperialism. Then we have territorial colectivos, which are the most demonized in the mass media. They said there are army groups paid by the government, but actually the territorial colectivos are like a lot of people in the cities, in the grassroots, working people who starts to worry by the community and starts to save even those youngsters that could be working in the market of drugs, in the trafficking of drugs. And they rescue them and start to organize them for sport, for organization. Actually, the territorial colectivos fight against the drug landlords in the cities. I think that's one of the most important characteristics of them. Then we have regional articulations. I actually told you before about the communal access or communal cities. There are different experiences in different parts of the country. Then we have people's militia. In the last, since 2002 coup d'etat, as I told you, that one of the lessons were that with mass media we can fight against the disinformation agenda. Also starts a discussion about the necessity that peoples can participate in the defense of the country against some kind of aggression. And during these last 5 years, when we are constantly threatened of a possible invasion, do you remember that the whole possibilities are on the table according to Donald Trump? So we actually have all the possibilities in the table too, and we have like 1 million of people, which is impossibility to fight like a regular army. to defend our homeland. And then we have the party grassroots. I think that the party in Venezuela, instead I told you that we come from a culture that criticizes the traditional parties. We have tried to build a party that could be a massive participation in the whole communities. I think that they have a lot to evaluate about that, but actually have grassroots presence important in the whole country. I think that I am really bad with the time. I will try to go fast now. Let me see. Trying to analyze a little about what has been that process. I've told you about this. I've told you Chavismo has been the middle point of revolutionary forces. Comes from the sickening of the parties and traditional ways of politics. We have a base ideological that are some heroes from independence in Venezuela. One of them is Simón Bolívar, which talks about the necessity of political integration. The other one is Simón Rodríguez, which was a master of Simón Bolívar, which talks that in America we need to build a project from our own. That is not the project of the West, it's not the projects of the North. And then we have Ezequiel Zamora, which proposed that we have to fight against oligarchy, that we can have national liberation instead that. This route has been inscribed in different periods of Bolivarian revolution. I told a little better about that in the reader that you have in the website. And of course, this different timeline that I've walked you through has been marked by the different emphasis in the distribution of the income, of the oil rent. There are moments where the principal goal was to achieve the infrastructure improvement of some communities. There are some points in which the water was the emphasis. There have been different moments. Well, I actually proposing here that we have during these years like some kind of different contradictions, but also what Enrique Dussel called potencias, which are accumulations of capacity of power that comes from the grassroots, from the consensus of communities. Also, I was talking in the summer school 2 days ago that it won't be possible to resist the different attacks during this year. We have had a sabotage to the electrical system during 5 days without electricity, without water. And if there is not a grassroots organization process, it will be really more difficult to support this. I'm not saying that we have another society already built, but actually we have a confrontation between the old ways of the market, of the globalization, and the new ways of the communal path. And one of those potentials, I think that are the agricultural production for sovereignty that doesn't guarantee the whole consumption on the country, but there are some important issues. In the rural grassroots, we have like a family consumption really guaranteed. All the families that have some ways of production that are family gardens, what we call conucos, that are like family gardens, family plantations, and also productive yards. It's about a changing in the lifestyle. It's a reconfiguration. They also contribute to local supply and also for another regions and the cities that are unproductive. Communal corridors and some communal access that I have told you before, they actually have some systems of exchange between them, of products, of knowledge, even seeds, even materials, and that's really important. They have also been obliged to learn about reproduction of seeds. In Venezuela, as most of our countries depends on the seed. And you can talk about that later much more. But these years has forced us to start to reproduce some seeds, to try to have some kind of sovereignty in that area. And also to fight, but for an anti-transgenic bill that we actually have in our country. And that's kind of the moment. Then we have another potential that is recovery and social use of land. In the cities, we have actually recovered a lot of land. The national housing policy in Venezuela, it's an important one, recently recognized by the UN, UN Habitat. We have built during the last 7 years 2.6 million. And for us, the important thing is that 37% of those housing has been built by different form of organizations of the people. One of them is the movement which I am part. That picture over there is actually one of our communities that has been built by the same working people that rescued that land. That was actually one land that belongs to the Pepsi. The Pepsi company in Venezuela has does land, and they have all those hectares full of how you call bottles, empty bottles, resting there. And then we have more of those communities. This one that is already built has started to talk and to discuss to farm food in there. And also in our cities, most of the time people starts to seed something in the space that he has, even in the balcony maybe. Oh, I have to go fast. The democratization of service and infrastructure networks, it's another important issue. The recovery of networks of roads, services, water, education, electricity, sports, environment, transportation. We are in a very difficult time right now, but if we don't have that, we will be even worse than that. And this, it's about a lot of communal councils that has executed a lot of public resources in a direct way. It's another way of management of the public, of the common resources. And that's also a point that I was about to tell you. Well, I haven't explained all the pictures. This one is actually one of those communities where people has achieved to build some new water pipeline system. These new modes of community management means a different way than the market. It's not the market, it's not different, it's not the state by itself, it's the state, it's the commune, the public resources managed directly by communities. And that in Venezuela has been an important achievement. It's not perfect, but we have an accumulation which is important. And it starts to have some different logics, some different methods. We have something that we call the communal cycle, which is diagnose, planning, distributing the works, building a project, executing, and then evaluating. When the communal council executes a project like any different kind, maybe building a sport facility, then has to evaluate to the whole community, has to say how they have used the different resources that they have. Well, and that suppose a redefinition of principles and agreement of community. It starts a discussion about how to solve the troubles of the community. Actually, we have a discussion about what we call communal parliament to build laws, bills, acts that are part of the community. One commune can have its own laws, which don't interfere with the national laws, but you can have your own agreements in there. And of course, we have what we call territorial aggregation and system of popular government. It starts to have different levels that democracy in some kind of integration system. For example, in the western area of the country, in the Andes, there are some states where communers has proposed that the whole original province, you call it in here in China, the whole province can be regrouped in communal access. That's actually happened in Merida. And that's what we call council-centered way of government has developed some possibilities of new forms of exercise the power. And we also say that, for example, in 2017, when in Venezuela has been called a new constituent assembly, that was the first time in our history that we elect a lot of representatives for this new assembly from communes, from worker unions, from gender equality organizations, people with disabilities, older adults, different sectors of society, and all the different territories in the country. I think that is a really important lesson of democracy. Well, for closure, I will a little resume of this. This accumulation of organizational capacities just confront the contradictions of the heritage model of society in Venezuela. One of the things that I think that it's important to highlight in here, let me mention some of them, that during this hard stage of the Bolivarian Revolution, there are recurrent internal and external voices that question if it is or not a revolution. But for us, the debate, and we would like to take advantage of that question, is that we have different battles right now happening in Venezuela for the need of an alternative to dispute global hegemony, but also for configuring a national reproductive mode, and also for recomposing an internal block of forces in this moment. These are three levels that means maybe one of them is the crisis of imperialism. Obviously, what is happening in Venezuela, what's going on in Venezuela, depends on the global war between the United States and China and Russia to the global hegemony. But it's also an expression of the crisis of the colonial rent disposition model in Venezuela and even in South America, where we have always been, not always, since 500 years ago, we always give commodities to the global accumulation. Now is the oil, but even before it has been coffee, cacao, and in the first time it was gold. So it's only changed, but business as usual in this case. And also, we have another challenge in here, which is this is the historical battle for life against the civilizatory crisis of capital. And we need to build a new mode of production and reproduction of life. In recent years, this battle has translated into a daily confrontation for life. in all the press and exclude territories. The central contradiction today is between capitalist civilization and the life of the peoples, the forces of dispossession versus the forces of the common. And that's something that we are living in Venezuela. We are suffering with intensity, and the blockade has been a catalyst for the internal contradictions about that. Revolution, and probably our biggest mistake, has been not recognizing the importance of those contradictions in order to study them and develop the necessary capacities to confront them. But our national project during these 20 years, has materialized on the basis of disputing the control of higher level of income from oil. And that will allow to avoid contradictions, but not to overcome them. Today, imperialism has developed a strategy that has progressively cut our ability to access income. Therefore, our metabolism has begun to collapse, and all areas of our project have been deteriorating. But this struggling here is exactly between the accumulation of what we call the communal way, which it's a actually fight between production for use, for livelihood, which is what is done in different organization territories, as I told you, against the circulation of income and exchange value. You have all that fighting in there. Which one is the way for the country? You have the social use and communal property that it is what is being each more proposed since the grassroots, against the latifundismo, which is the landlord control, and real estate speculation. That's a battle between the one who needs the land to live, to reproduce life, against the one who needs the land to reproduce capital. We also have the struggle between the new redistributive and management transfer mode, which has already proved her efficiency, versus one model of country that has been built over the contractors, bidders, and trade chambers, and endowment, all those enterprises that all they want is to live from the oil rent and take advantage of the state to endowment. And then we have the confrontation between the self-government way that also has been proved versus the hegemony of political intermediaries. The history of policy, maybe of all our countries, are politics as the corruption of the common. A little bit of people control decisions for everyone, and that's and those are people who intermediates, and that's something that is confronting right now in Venezuela between the ones who think that to transcend the situation, to confront the actual blockade, we need more self-government, more government of the people. And for closure, that struggle between the communal state, the possibility of aggregation since the grassroots, versus the bourgeois state, which is the state that that has been built for the disposition. And those are like really big titles, all of them to discuss, but I don't want to take more time. I prefer to open the discussion.